I'm Kate Daniels. We do have some harsh and ugly things that happen in our world, and human trafficking is one of the big uglies. And it happens right here in our own state. Ruchira Gupta is a feminist campaigner, a professor at New York University, and founder of an anti-sex trafficking organization, Apni App Women Worldwide. She is an author and has a new young adult novel, I Kick and I Fly, which looks right into the harsh world of sex trafficking based on actual events that Ruchira witnessed in India. Harsh as it is, this is a story of hope. It's the full message Ruchira wants us to hear and to share and do something about. So let's hear directly from the author herself. Ruchira Gupta, good morning. Thank you so greatly for being with us today.
Good morning.
You are an inspiring, of course, woman, but so informative and informed and just really dedicated to doing so much good in the world. And I am so grateful that we have this opportunity to talk and that you are sharing this message of who you are and what you're doing in the world in a new book, I Kick and I Fly.
Yes, and I Kick and I Fly is for young people. It's published by Scholastic because I want young people to know that they can stand up to injustice and win. The book is about a 14-year-old girl called Hira, who's from a nomadic tribe in India. And she's about to be sold into prostitution when a women's rights advocate enrolls her in a kung fu program. And through the practice of kung fu, she learns the power of her body and how to fight for it. Now, this seems so impossible, but if you read the book, you will find out how it becomes possible with every chapter. And also, I want to tell all the listeners that, it's based on true stories in my NGO, Apne Aap.
And truly, there is a part of this for sure that just doesn't seem impossible, even without reading the story, which is so compelling. And, even as an older adult, I feel the story really touches me deeply. So I think it's for all ages. But I really I'm so grateful that it's available for young girls and boys too should be reading this to be informed and aware, but for young girls to feel where they have power, how to find that power is so critically important.
Very true. I tested this book on my 14-year-old nephew when I wrote it. And he asked me questions which I hadn't even thought about. He said, I felt very uncomfortable when the girl had to take off her clothes on stage or when she had to put the phone inside her blouse. And his mother was sitting with us and she said, so what did you think after reading that, in a very strict tone? And he said, I just felt that I never want to be those people who have to watch this or be part of it. So I thought, here's what I want to do through my book. It's done. And then he asked me, he said, I also want another book. I want to know what happened to her brother. Her brother's name is Salman in the book. And he wants to know what happens to Hira's brother, because he found Hira's brother, who's a gentle boy who wants to stop studying science and start working somewhere because he wants his sister to continue to study in school and not be sold. And it's a family which is ridden by poverty and hunger. So I thought, here is a boy who's learning empathy, who's understanding girls, and will be a different boy because he's read I Kick and I Fly. And that's exactly what I wanted to do with my book.
And you're just proving how it really has that appeal for boys as well as being written for girls. So that empathy piece is so critically important in our world. It seems to be lacking so much, and to be able to find ways to build that, you're doing that. So you're accomplishing so many missions, Ruchira.
Yes, I am. And this is because I believe there's nothing like great literature to build empathy. All my life I have devoured books And with every book, I have learned to be able to imagine the other person more and more and put myself in their shoes. And I think that has made me a more connected person to the world, where I can understand every living being when I see them, if it's a stone or a plant, a tree or a human being. I feel more connected to them. And that makes me happier as a person. So I think that's why I chose writing a book as my medium, because I had a hopeful story which was based on truths to share. And I thought, I have to write it as a book so that other people can enter the world that I want to share as deeply and as sympathetically as possible.
And what you describe is really such a harsh and basically ugly part of our world. And it's not limited by any means to India. That just happens to be where you witnessed this happening and based the story there, as well as in New York. So we have the crossing into the U.S. But to really give us that sense of hopefulness, that's so critical for us to always know we can hold on to hope even when things are pretty dire.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope is a form of planning, as Gloria Steinem says, and I've discovered that because if I don't have hope, then I'll stop doing anything. During the lockdown when we were stuck inside our homes and we didn't know if we would live or die or what would happen to our near and dear ones, hope was what kept us going. I saw hope in nature. I saw hope when monsoon hit India and the trees began to flower again and blossom again. So I also completed I Kick and I Fly during the lockdown, and I wanted to share it with kids everywhere, including in America, because I live in New York, I teach at NYU, and I have had students who've been through a lot of abuse and who've told me about it because they take a class on human trafficking with me. And I realized that human trafficking is a big problem in the United States, but no one talks about it. It affects children, but nobody will talk to children about it. Now, this is a problem because if we don't teach children how to spot the signs of trafficking, how to equip themselves to fight it, and how to save themselves and their friends, then we are letting the problem stay because we can't cope with a problem only. We have to confront it. And, the numbers are staggering of trafficking in the United States. People say more than 100,000 to 300,000 victims of trafficking live in the United States. And then the other data which is staggering is that the average age of a girl being trafficked in the United States is between 13 and 15. This should not be happening in America. America has food, clothing, shelter. We have infrastructure. So there are ways to combat it, but we have to accept the problem. So then we denormalize it, and then we find a solution. So my book is really a message in a bottle to everyone out there who needs to know that, yes, human trafficking exists. I begin the book in India and end it in Queens in New York to show how universal it is. And also that something can be done about it, not to give up, but to fight back. If a community in Bihar, in India can do it, so can we.
And that is definitely the big message, and sharing it through story and sharing how your nephew was really touched by it and how it's having a formative effect on him. But, as we discuss this and the great need for it, and it's on a topic, a subject that is very real and yet so harsh, do you imagine that there would be people who would want to ban the book because they say, well, we can't have our children reading this?
The big culture war in America right now is what should we talk to our young people about or not. And I think there is nothing more important than talking to young people with truths, but with hope. And there is nothing better than storytelling to do so. And I have a true story. I actually have a true story to share with young people, and it's in the voice of a young girl who goes through everything that Hira does go through and triumphs at the end of it. So here is a way to talk to young people about a harsh subject like human trafficking and show them that it can be fought back. So at least we give them a tool to navigate the challenges in their lives. And every child has to go through facing not human trafficking, but fear, shame, and guilt, bullying, body shaming, all these things happen to us. And the Center for Disease Control has just come out with a report recently saying that, teen mental health is a big issue and the root causes are sexual abuse, food insecurity, homelessness, bullying, body shaming. I touch upon all these subjects, and with Scholastic, we've developed end resources, we've developed a reader's guide, I've developed lots of resources for students. I'm trying to build a community so that we can trigger the conversation and bring about change. I wrote in my author's note in I Kick and I Fly that I am passing, as a lifelong activist against sex trafficking, with this book, I'm passing the baton on to the next generation, because now the time has come to broaden the movement beyond the laws, beyond the community that I helped in Bihar in India, to the whole of this country, to every child who will stand for a world in which no child is bought or sold.
Yes.
And so the people who are listening are the people who are going to pick up the baton today.
Yes. And those who will pick up a copy of the book, or maybe they find it at their school library or their public library, but to share it and read it, and in being able for classrooms, as you said, Scholastic provides the tools to have a discussion where there is greater understanding. That's the way, through knowledge and understanding, is how we're going to combat this really horrible problem.
Exactly. And I want this I Kick and I Fly to fly into the hands of every child in America. And, the people who are going to help me do it are parents and teachers, because they can make sure that this is there in schools and this is there in libraries. It's time to have the conversation and protect our kids.
Yes. And it is really wonderful that we have this book, I Kick and I Fly, because in being a story with a true story basis to it, it really has a way to resonate. It's factual, and it's told in a, well, the hopefulness is certainly there, but it's such relatable characters. You are a great writer in that way, to be able to really share that with us.
Tell me more.
Well, it with your experience, you just have the ability to be in the voice of the young people. It's really, it feels authentic, certainly, and yet it's written in such a way that, as an adult, I read it and I'm turning the pages because I want to know what happens. And when I want to also be an advocate and make change in the world, I think it helps us, it guides us, and it gives us that kind of information.
Wonderful. That's exactly what I wanted the book to do. And, I wrote it as a social justice adventure. I don't know if such a genre exists. And it's fast-paced. And it's a page-turner to the point that my editor at Scholastic would tell me, slow down the pace, because I was just churning it out like very, very fast. And, so in every chapter by chapter, Hira kicks and flies. And there are ups and downs and family feuds and love and fighting and kidnapping and triumph and hope and communities coming together. There's a lot of action and there's a lot of visual detail. You're right.
Yes. And the bonds of friendship really are very powerful here. And I think that underscores it for young people and for adults as well. But seeing how having that connection so that we don't feel we're alone, that there is someone who cares.
Yeah, that is super important. That has also been super important to me as an activist, all my life is that, when I felt I want to give up and I can't carry on, it's friends. And you create a family of choice as you go along, and they'll tell you, no, you're doing the right thing, or yeah, here we are here to help you. And I literally have friends across the world where I'll just show up, and I may be in Morocco, but they'll take me to a trafficking shelter to meet someone, and then I'll feel inspired. Or even in New York, someone like Gloria Steinem saying your book is going to save the world. And I say, okay, if Gloria Steinem is saying so, then probably it might.
Well, that is really a huge proclamation about the book, that if she can see that, and because we respect who she is and what she has accomplished, to have that go along with it, underscores what we already feel about it, and that we should be encouraged.
That's right. And, sometimes it's like a pinch me moment, or did she really say that? How can that be? And what does it mean, really? But that only the future will show us, right? If the book will save the world and what it will do. Because ultimately, it won't even be about me. It'll be between the reader and the book.
Yes. Well, that is true. And even if we do not see that it has saved the world, but we will see lives saved. We will see lives changed and things made different. And as long as that begins and that we see that beginning, then there's that added hope.
Yes.
Right.
And that'll probably keep me going for another 10 years.
Until we have a sequel. Maybe you'll have to do what your nephew was asking about, and have more of the story come out about the family, or find out how these young boys evolve.
Yes, for sure. There's a Salman story there somewhere. And then I have another book signed up with Scholastic for next year, which is set in Arizona in the desert.
Ooh. And can you say more or not yet?
Not yet, because I'm still working on it.
Sure, and I respect that. Besides, this is the book that's out new and that we need to be focused on and really take time with. And it has grown out of, as you had said, your organization. Is it pronounced Apne App?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, good.
It's Apne Aap.
Apne Aap. And does it relate in some ways? Do those words have to do with women and supporting women in finding their voice and their place in the world?
Yes, Apne Aap means self-action in Hindi. And when we realized very quickly that there's no one going to come from above to save us, it has to be each other. And we had to organize in circles to find our collective strength. That's how we chose the name Apne Aap. And it happened, when I was making the documentary in Bombay, someone stuck a knife at my throat. And I thought, I'm going to die now. No one can save me, because I was in a tiny room. There was only one door. The door was blocked by the man who had walked in with a knife in his hand. And I was sitting on a bed, and the other side was this window with iron bars. But the women who I was interviewing, they surrounded me. And they said, if you've got to kill her, you've got to kill us first. Mm-hmm. And that's when I realized the power of women's collective action very, very concretely. And that was when, in a way, the first Apne Aap circle was born, even though Apne Aap did not exist at that time.
But it was the vision, the literal vision of what was to be.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh, that gives me chills. That's so perfect that it showed you the way, the path of what needed to be created.
Yes. Yeah. And we only have to listen to each other. And nothing comes from the top. It comes from each other.
Yes. And in so many ways, we are feeling that in our world, where there is so much loneliness and isolation, that we need to see how we need each other and how there is strength and encouragement and support and just having connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sisterhood is powerful and sisterhood is global.
And you continue to illustrate that, and you commit your life. It's not just something that you know is a good thing, but you've committed your entire life to this and find ways to share that message and make it real.
I have committed my life to it, and I know I'll never be finished, but I'll always keep doing what I'm doing, and, everything is going to make a dent in this horrible organized crime of sex trafficking because they can't succeed. We have to succeed.
Yes.
And I Kick and I Fly is really a message to all the traffickers out there that, we'll kick them aside and we are going to fly.
Yes, exactly. And often what happens is there's a lot of kicking and screaming before they go down. So it's not that it's necessarily going to happen easily, but there needs to be that persistence, that awareness, the conversation around it, and knowing that it's possible to beat it down and to come out victorious.
Exactly. And, there's a scene, there are a couple of fights in my book where Hira takes on the traffickers. In one, she just bites his hand because he's so much bigger than her and he lets out a yelp and she manages to escape. And there's another one where she uses a great sidekick and, uses the philosophy of Bruce Lee to inspire herself, to, channelize her energy and become stronger than she is. And I think there is something very powerful in that, to discover the power of ourselves.
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. And how she knew that she needed to do this because it wasn't just helping herself, but it was helping her family as well.
Yes.
Right.
That also was a big motivation for Hira. And you spoke about the power of friendships, but that fact that she needed to help her friend,
Yes.
the fact that she had to feed her younger siblings, the fact that her mother was trying so hard to keep her in school, her cousin. Hira is full of love for all of them and loyal, fiercely loyal.
And it was great, really, to see that. Like with her mother, as much as she had been beaten down by her role in life, still, though, had a spark within her that she wanted to pass on to her daughters. And she obviously passed it on to her son, too, because of just how compassionate he was in his life with his family.
Yes. And how one person, who's an activist like Rini D, she's giving a speech and other people are listening, and how that sparks a woman who's completely dominated and oppressed like Hira's cousin Meera, who's already been sold into the sex trade, and yet she thinks women can organize and have a different future. It makes such a difference, one person taking a stand.
Yes.
Courage is contagious.
Yes. And I think where we might feel so small and lack that, when we read a story and know that it is based on fact, that gives us that real feeling of, well, maybe I could, at least venturing forward, and that encouragement is so powerful.
Yeah, and what I've done also in the book is that I've created end resources where young people can go and volunteer, join up. I've also given ways that people can learn, educate, share the whole issue of human trafficking, about the book and human trafficking. And then I've gone on my website on ruchiragupta.com to put up some calls to action. If people want to do more, I've also created more resources to build a community against human trafficking. For parents and teachers, there are resources. For kids, there are resources. And, I just want this book to become part of a conversation which will trigger a movement which will grow bigger and bigger and bigger against human trafficking.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. big applause that is what my hope along with you is. And I can't imagine that there aren't others who have the same feeling. And I just, with these resources and what you shared from your website, the calls to action, I could see happening with so many different organizations and in classrooms that it will be such a rallying call that, will empower and really ignite such good things happening.
Yeah, and I Kick and I Fly itself is a call to action. It's broken the silence, and I'm so grateful to Scholastic because they have taken the bold move to publish the book and take it to young people. So they have helped me break the silence. And now it's up to the children who read it and the young adults who read it and the adults who read it to take the next step.
Exactly. And yes, that is a great thing to say about Scholastic, that they accepted this, well, challenge basically to publish a book with this subject matter for youth. And that's a great thing. I can only imagine good things happening. And I am just so grateful that you have the passion that you do, Ruchira Gupta, to write this and to share it with the world. And I do so appreciate your taking time with us this morning to give us these insights as well.
Thank you. And I have a final call to action to all your listeners. Buy the book. It's available in bookstores near you and online. Share the book and do continue to break the silence around sex trafficking.
Exactly.